Oh yeah. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the Round Table Podcast once
Oh, yeah.
again. Thank you for joining us. Today, just me, Sir Matthew, and we have Pox. Alright, let's get into it. So in today's episode, we will go in depth of the book of First Timothy, because we kind of touched up on one of the verses that Parks had suggested, but we're going to go more in depth with the entire chapter and kind of break it down.
Oh, really?
All right. Well, chapter 1. I mean, verse 1. All right. No, we don't have to read the entire thing. We just gotta summarize it, because
Best tip I've ever heard.
for all who are listening, don't ever take somebody's word for it. Read the Word of God yourself. It is much better that way.
Think with your own mind.
Listen to us, but also don't believe everything we say without, testing it for yourself. Exactly, test it for yourself. So, chapter 1. I'm gonna say my kind of summary about it, and then you can tell me whatever notes and thoughts you have on it. All right. Paul begins by urging Timothy in chapter 1 to remain in Ephesus, which is an early church, to confront false teachers who are promoting false doctrines and myths. These teachers lacked a proper understanding of the law or misusing it. Paul emphasizes the importance of love and genuine faith and highlights his own conversion as an example of God's mercy. He charges Timothy to guard his faith, avoid false teachings, and fulfill his calling as a faithful minister of the gospel.
Okay. Chapter 1. Well, I did notice
that's all.
It did speak out on a bunch of laws, including homosexuality.
What are your thoughts on chapter 1?
Which many people will say the Bible never does that. I've heard many people say it.
Yeah.
I've heard many people say that the Bible never says homosexuality is bad.
Sorry, what were you saying?
It does mention it as one of the laws. Hold on. I forgot what verse it is. Let me find it. Yeah.
All right.
I didn't.
All right. Where exactly does it? Yeah. Find the exact verse. So.
Oh, why am I in 2 Thessalonians? Yeah. I had it open today. Okay, here we go.
2 Thessalonians.
It is 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 10. Says the sexually immoral men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine.
Well, there you have it. Proof that the Bible says that homosexuality is wrong, and there are many sources for this, including Romans chapter 1, I believe, where it touches up on the same subject. In fact, Paul, in these letters, when he the original translation of homosexuality, he actually kind of invented his own word using the Greek language, basically meaning men sleeping together and or women sleeping together. But he invented his own word to try to make it fit into the language he was writing in, which is interesting.
Oh, well, I also saw where it speaks on how Jesus saved him from being...
Is that all your thoughts on chapter 1?
Paul from being a... whatever they call it. I forgot the word. But basically how Jesus...
Yeah, Paul
Oh, I remember the word. It's blasphemer. Just found
And
it.
before Paul came to Christ, he actually persecuted Christians and followers of Jesus, and actually, like, yeah, blasphemer. And there was one story, I forgot where it was, somewhere in the New Testament, where Paul would actually hold the coats of the people that were going to stone Christians and Jesus' disciples. He encouraged it. Yeah. And he mentions, I think his exact words were, I am the chief of sinners. Basically showing and admitting that he considers himself to be the most sinful person because he persecuted Christians. And that's the biggest part of Christianity and really getting yourself right with God is admitting that what you've done was wrong. That's the first step. Alright, moving on to chapter 2. In this chapter, Paul addresses the conduct of the congregation, particularly in matters of prayer. He instructs the prayer be offered to all people, including those in authority, emphasizing the importance of peace and godliness. Paul also addresses the role of women in public worship, urging them to dress modestly and to learn quietly without rather than assuming teaching authority over men. And my King James version that I was reading, the actual way he put it is women are not supposed to usurp the power and authority over men.
Yeah.
Yes, usurp, so like intentionally undermine people in authority, which is wrong. So when you look at it in that light, it definitely makes a lot of sense when it says for women to be silent. It's not literally saying you can't talk. It's not literally saying you can't talk in church. It's saying that you can't usurp the authority that Jesus set up in the early church, which was men being the spiritual leaders. And if you're listening and you think that's unfair, you can't really argue with God if you're a Christian. If you're a Christian, you kind of have to accept his rules and laws, and it's understandable. Women have their roles in the church, men have their roles in the church. There is equality, so to speak, in God's eyes, and like he mentioned in earlier of Paul's letters, and even Jesus himself said on multiple occasions that regarding men and women, are equal when it comes to like spirituality. God doesn't judge you based on your gender. He judges you based on your heart and your actions.
On that chapter.
So, any thoughts on that chapter?
It mentioned Jesus was the only mediator between
Chapter 2.
Christ and man. And I have seen some people that don't believe that. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard these big popular mega church pastors on like television and stuff, the ones that get a lot of attention, saying that there are multiple ways to heaven, there's multiple ways to live with God in the end, and it's not. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me." And this is reinforcing the fact that He is the only way to heaven. He is the only way to God, to righteousness. So, we'll move on to chapter 3. Paul warns Timothy of the rise of false teachings and would lead people astray. He emphasizes the value of sound doctrine, encouraging Timothy to be a faithful teacher, an example to the believers. Paul encourages Timothy to devote himself to the Word of God, pointing out the importance of spiritual training and godliness. He instructs Timothy to be diligent in his duties. In doing this, he will benefit both himself and the church that he is preaching to.
On just a second.
What are your thoughts on chapter 4?
Yes, I think it's a great chapter to see how godliness should work in a church and how we should be one church family.
Yeah, and I think is it chapter 5? I think the next chapter.
Yeah.
I talk
The next
about
chapter really talks about I
roles
think it's
and,
widows, isn't it?
Okay, so the
That's the
next
main part
one,
on the next chapter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in dealing with different groups in the church, widows and elders. Okay, so yeah, in chapter 5, Paul addresses various issues related to the treatment of different groups of the church. He advises Timothy on, chapter 5, on how to handle interactions with older and younger members, widows, and elders. Paul emphasizes the importance of showing respect, care, and fairness in dealing with these different
You just skip chapter
demographics.
4. That was
When
chapter
did
3 we were on.
Oh, I thought we talked about chapter 4. Yeah, we already. No. We talked
Chapter
about
3 is
chapter
what I
4.
was talking about. Did you go straight to
Oh, we
4?
skipped chapter 3.
Oh, so all that might not have made sense.
Yeah. Okay, so let me talk about chapter 3 real quick. Paul provides guidance, guidelines for selecting and appointing overseers, bishops, and deacons in the church. He lists qualifications of these positions, highlighting the importance of character, integrity, and maturity. The leaders of the church should be committed to their families and have a good reputation
So
among
this is where I
believers
was
and in
talking
the wider
about
community.
how it really represents how a church family should work and what a deacon means to the church.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially like how to become a church leader. Like if you're ever unsure about, I kind of want to preach the gospel, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start a church. Am I qualified? And that's being a big question for me. What are the uh, what are the guidelines that really I have to meet in order to preach the gospel to a selective congregation? And it points it out right here in chapter 3 of 1 Timothy. Especially when it talks about the family unity and how, they should be committed to their wives and their families. And in some translations, it basically says ruling, so to speak, your household, which means, making sure that, raising your kids to be right, not letting anything get in the way of that,
Yes.
not letting injustice be in your house or anything like that. That also can play into, defending your home because the family unit is like the second most important thing to anybody, especially Christians.
Exactly.
First, there's God, and then there's your devotion to your families.
Are we gonna move on to chapter 4? Because I
So,
didn't say anything
was it
about it.
chapter
Because I got mixed up.
5 that
I
we
thought we
didn't
were on
go over
chapter
yet?
3.
Oh, yeah. And, chapter 4 was when Paul warns Timothy about false teachings and leading people astray, how he should,
Yeah.
spiritually train himself.
Well, I noticed how it said, it was talking about how, let me find it says, have nothing to do with irrelevant, silly myths, rather train yourself for godliness. It also says, bodily training is of some value, but training your mind is of more.
You heard that.
Yeah.
Paul himself says to work out, but at the end of the day,
Yeah, he says, yeah, exactly.
spiritually strengthening yourself is
So
far more
we should
important.
have strong minds. We should work on our minds.
Exactly. especially in this day and age, I think we need to practice a lot more critical thinking, and not just listen to whatever we're heard, but to check the sources, know what they're talking about, and really responding to that and knowing your stand on views
Yes.
based on biblical context and what you believe.
And it also speaks on fasting.
So,
And I know a couple people who will fast and say it's for Jesus, but it says that the foods are created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. So like God created the food for us to eat, and we shouldn't fast from it.
it's not just it's also a response to people who followed the old
Yeah.
Mosaic laws and not eating pork and unclean food, so to speak. Uh, and though yes, that was in the Bible and that is still relevant, but when Jesus was the fulfillment of that law and of that promise from God to man, and he made a new covenant with men to God, a new way for them to connect, and that is Jesus' way. And so Paul is clarifying, in these beginning churches, how you have people who followed the Jewish laws and people who didn't, and how there was a lot of conflict. And so he explains, hey, God made all food for us, especially now. And so you shouldn't get into arguments about what you eat.
Okay, now we can move on to chapter 5 that you've been so desperately waiting
Okay.
for.
Chapter. I want the chapter 5. Chapter 5. Paul addresses various issues related to the treatment of different groups in the church. He advises Timothy on how to handle interactions with older and younger members, widows and elders. Paul emphasizes the importance of showing respect, care, fairness, and dealing with these different demographics.
Yes, I
What are
think
your
it is
thoughts on
a
that chapter?
very good chapter. I really hadn't had much time to think on this, but what I'm getting from it is like if a widow is so old, she shouldn't remarry. I think it said like above 60. But if she is widowed really young, she should remarry and have children and grow them up in a faithful household.
Yeah, I don't know why even after, even in in our generations and our parents' generations, it was viewed as it was wrong, a sin to remarry if your husband or wife had died. And Paul is clarifying that right now. Is hey, it's not a sin. In fact, they encourage it.
But it does have an age limit. She should only remarry so that she can have kids and raise them to be believers.
True, very true. We all have a purpose in life, and it is the most important purpose of mankind to procreate, have lots of children and raise them up to do good in this world. What? What?
Your family does have lots of children.
Yeah.
I don't know how I could handle that.
I want at least 20. That way I can have
About
like
3 or
most of
so,
them, as servants. 3 of my 20 kids will be my personal butlers, and the rest will work on my farm.
Oh, hold on here. Now, if we go back a little bit, let me see what chapter it was. It was chapter 1 that also said enslaving, or enslavers is a sin. They're blasphemers.
Hey. Hey. It's not slavery, okay? It's the
Yeah,
family units, okay? It's not. It's not un. It's
You're
not
giving them
unpaid
food.
labor because my own kids, and they would be, yes. You're making it sound bad. I'm feeding them. I'm teaching them. I'm letting them live with me. protecting them, if you really look at it from the bare bones perspective, it does sound kind of bad,
You're so gracious, in letting your children live with you, and so merciful.
Exactly. In exchange, they need to work.
Yeah, that 5-year-old working for his food.
Hey, the Bible does say, it's big against laziness and
But it
slothfulness to say,
also,
hey, don't work, you don't eat. That's
it was
where
in
the saying
Timothy. It
came
was
from.
talking about how we shouldn't be busybodies, but we should have free time so that we may spend it reflecting on ourselves and training our mind for Jesus.
Exactly, and that's the big part of
Exactly.
the Sabbath day, the holy day for God and for rest. Now Jesus said, "Hey, the Sabbath, man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man because they can't work
So we
7
got
days a
6,
week,
and that was too hard,
just
so
straight work.
people made it 5.
7 days, exactly. 6 days you will labor, and the last day you will rest." Not saying you should labor till your back is gone, but work to provide for your family. All right, let's talk about the last chapter, the final chapter, chapter 6 of First Timothy. The final chapter, Paul warns against the love of money and the pursuit of wealth, as as those things can lead to spiritual harm. Encourages contentment and godliness is the proper mindset for believers. Paul charges Timothy to guard his faith, avoid false teachings, and live a life of righteousness. He reminds Timothy of the eternal reward that awaits him when he faithfully serves Christ. Money. Let's talk about that for a second.
Money is a good thing when used
What are your
wisely,
thoughts?
and it also speaks on how we should share with our family and anyone who's. I think it was in chapter 5 actually. It says anyone whose family is struggling and they won't help is worse than a unbeliever. But it might have been chapter 6. I don't know. I forgot where it was.
But yeah, if you're making money, if God is blessing you with prosperity, you need to, share that with others. Not because, you're entitled to give your money away to your family, but,
You
as
should
a
help them
as
at
to
least
be
live
kind,
so you can still have some
you
family.
want to help out your family. Yeah. In fact, I just got back from work in Georgia, and God has blessed me. God has blessed me
Oh yeah,
with a lot of money so far.
one rich
So
man.
not only am I tithing, not only am I tithing 10%, but
Not
I'm
even
also
15.
doing just
You're
little
such a
stuff.
sinner.
At least 10%. I kind of just picked a number at random, so it's probably more. But that's not the point. The point is, any money I have left over, yes, I'm going to save it for my future. But I'm also going to, if my family needs it, I'm going to freely give, and that's something I've been working on in my spiritual life. Is money's just an object, but at the same time, I
Yeah.
kind of need to save it up
You
for
have
my
to save it
future.
up for your
So I
family one day.
try to get a good balance. Yeah, exactly. A good balance of saving money for your future and also, willing to give it away in a
Exactly.
second to those in need. In fact, Paul mentions all throughout his letters that one of the greatest things that you can do in your spiritual walk is charity. Now, it doesn't just mean the devotion of money and giving to other people. It's also giving of your time,
Exactly.
giving of kindness. That is the center point of being a Christian and living a Christian lifestyle is giving up yourself, denying yourself, your own personal time and helping
Exactly. You
others
don't
in
have to
need.
have money to donate. You can go out in front of Walmart and ring the bell for Salvation Army. I do that all the time.
Yeah, you can. I can. Wait a second. You're that Santa Claus I saw. Yeah, I mean, you can just, help out your next door neighbor, cut some grass, help your communities in very small,
Yeah.
easy ways. That's,
Or
giving
you
up
could
of
cut
your
their
free
grass for 50
time
bucks.
for somebody else. And then use that $50 to buy food and then have a
Exactly.
potluck at your church. Exactly. Oh man, I love potlucks
I
so
don't know.
much.
It depends. Because some churches don't have people that cook very
What if
good. Depends if they can cook good or not.
I don't know? At my old Baptist church I went
Well, they can
to,
always cook.
we would oh yeah, but every once in a while, I think like once a year or twice a year, we would get the neighboring Mennonite church over, and we would have a big potluck. And the Mennonites, oh my word, they
I
cook
know.
so good. Oh my gosh, they are wizards when it comes to
Oh, let's not
food.
get magical. We're talking
My
about the Bible
word.
right here.
Hey, uh, the donut
Oh,
wagon,
goodness.
man.
Yes.
Have you ever been there?
Well, I hadn't
Oh
actually.
my
Oh,
gosh.
I've been to it
They,
once at the Apple Festival.
I follow them on Facebook. Yeah, I follow them on Facebook, and they just posted that they have a new peanut butter donut.
I'd rather the pretzel.
In
I
fact,
don't like peanut butter donuts.
hey,
I'd rather the
this
regular.
I think is this Friday. They're going to be in
I'll have to
Seneca
go there.
at the old, at the old, what was it called? Fads
Oh
Cafe
yeah. Oh
parking
yeah. I
lot.
saw that on Facebook when I
Um,
was on
oh
Marketplace.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can swing by there and get a
Oh
donut.
yeah.
Oh, they are fresh donuts, so big.
Get a donut and a
Oh, you
pretzel
you
because
you
then
kind
you
of.
have the super sweet with the
Oh,
salty when you want it. Oh, it's so good.
oh my! I've never tried their
Dude, their
pretzels.
pretzels, they're like the huge soft pretzels. Those things are amazing. You have to get one.
Yeah, I need to get one. Uh, but yeah, they travel around in a little food
Turn
truck.
into the donut wagon
They're
promotion.
so good. Oh my word! They travel
They're
all
getting free
around.
promotions right now.
Definitely follow them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely follow them on Facebook. It is amazing. But yeah. Anyway, in fact, my boss would joke around, not joke around, but seriously say in our big kettle that we put kettle corn in, it's huge, and he always says, hey, if a church wants to do a potluck, I can just bring that. We can cook a whole deer in it, make a big old stew or something, big old barbecue just on the big kettle. Oh,
How many people
that would
would
be
you say could
amazing.
fit in there?
People, let's see. I mean, if I scrunched up, I could fit in there, but not fully.
Just your head sticking out like
So
in that well.
it exactly. So if they're sticking out a little bit, you can probably fit like four small children. I mean, two grown people. This makes it sound wrong. No, no, no. But no, you can fit like a whole deer in that
Uh,
thing. Stew it up.
oh yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that is a in-depth, discussion thingy, majigger, whatever we did,
Yes.
of First Timothy. A lot of wisdom in there.
Most of it was
No,
about the
and it
donut
needs.
wagon.
Yeah, for all of those who are listening, read it for yourself and do it, slowly, really soak it all in because there's a lot of wisdom there. I encourage you not to just use, one Bible. Use as many translations as you can. And you can get them all super easy.
You get them
Google
all
them
for
on the
free on
internet.
the Bible app.
Yeah, the
On your
Bible
phone
app.
that you're listening to us right now from.
Exactly. And also, give us a follow.
Oh yeah.
It
You can
takes
make
very.
donations in person. I'll take
We haven't set
20 bucks
up.
if you have it.
We haven't set up that quite yet, but yes, hopefully, soon the YouTube page will be up, and that way our listeners can comment, any questions they might have or suggestions.
Yes.
Maybe Bible verses that they would like us to cover or bring light to, or just, some topics they would like us to cover. And we will be happy to do that. Engage in our future fan base. So yes, give us a follow. Share us with as many of your friends and family as you can. Share it at your church. Print off a little, QR code
Print off
and
book
spread it.
this.
Yes, spread out these QR codes of our Spotify link. Put it in your church lobby. Spread it out to everybody, and we will.
I'll put it on YouTube. Say,
And we will.
I'm gonna put it on some website and say free Robux.
But we what? The
You get
more
free
people,
V-Bucks.
the more people we reach, the better. And, Spotify and Anchor will help us reach and sponsor us if we get, more people connected to this podcast. And that would be great to have sponsors to help support this podcast and make it grow, and being able to, help other people locally, help our churches, help our, our peers that might have questions. Free to do that.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on the Roundtable Podcast. We'll see you next week.